Hi, this is Justin with Methvin Sanitation. Today, Jacob is going to show you how to do a thorough pre-trip inspection. Pre-trip inspection is very important to verify that your vehicle is safe to operate. DOT law requires that all CDL drivers perform a pre-trip inspection daily. So please pay close attention, write down your questions, and ask your supervisor when you get done if you need any help. So please pay close attention to Jacob, and if you have questions, write them down and ask your supervisor later. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Jacob Williams with Methvin Sanitation. We're going to do an inspection of the truck. So when you guys go to take your CDL walk around, this will help you out and you'll be able to know what to expect for a CDL walk around. I'm going to begin a walk around of the front of the truck, observing all appearance. I'm checking for any leaks on the ground, any wires, hoses, or debris hanging down, looking to see if the truck is leaning to one side, indicating a possible low tire or suspension problem. I'm checking overhead clearance, that there are no limbs, wires, etc. hanging down that would hit the truck or trailer. First, we're going to go to the front of the vehicle. We're going to make sure all the headlights are good and the top lights. The top lights are amber in color. The headlights, the fog lights are clear, no cracks or moisture in the lights. Make sure your windshield is clean, no cracks and no illegal stickers, and make sure nothing is in your peripheral vision. Make sure your wipers are good. These wipers right here, make sure they're not cracked or no rubber hanging down. Check your bumper. Make sure your plate is on your bumper and secure. Make sure your bumper is secure in good condition. Make sure all this stuff works when you turn your truck on. Okay, this is your engine compartment. All hoses, no leaking, no cracked or frayed exhaust, no black soot on your exhaust indicating exhaust leak. You look at your belt, make sure your belt is good, not frayed, not tore or cut, and you can't have over 3/4 inches of travel on your belt. Here's the alternator right here. This is all one belt, runs everything. Here's your water pump. Make sure your water pump is not leaking. Here's your oil. You pull this out right here. This is your oil dipstick. Make sure your oil level is good on there. Make sure it's in operating range. If it's low, add a gallon of oil. This is your oil level cap. When you fill this up with oil, you need to take this off, and when you put it back on, you need to make sure it's really tight and secure. Make sure your coolant level is good and in operating range, no leaks, and all proper fluid levels. Power steering pump, make sure it is not leaking. Here's your power steering feel. If it's low, you got a sight glass right here, and if it's low, add a little bit. You'll look at your air compressor on here. Make sure your air compressor is in good working order. Make sure it's not leaking or draining anything out of it. Look at all your wires. Make sure nothing is hanging down or loose. Steering box is secured tightly, no loose bolts, no leakage, cuts or frays in hoses. Steering linkage, pitman arm, bolted securely, drag link, bolted securely, crown nuts with cotter keys are on securely. Okay, on your front suspension, you want to check your spring and your air. Make sure your springs are secured tightly to the frame. These are your springs. Here's your U-bolts. Right here, this U-bolt comes around, holds your spring on your axle. No leafs missing, no loose bolts. And your shock absorbers are tightly secure, and your springer hangers are all there, and no welds in your springer hangers or breaks in your springer hangers. Okay, well, now we're going to go to the front brakes. Look at your slack adjusters. No more than 1 inch of travel on the slack adjuster. Brake chamber mounted tightly, no dangling, not broken. Your brake hoses, no leaking, cuts or frays. Brake drums, no cracks, are no longer than a 1/4 inch away from the surface. No chunks missing. You want at least a 1/4 inch of gap on your lining. Okay, now we're going to go to the front tire. Here's your front tire, and your tire even tread wear, no less than 4 30-second tread wear on your tire. You want to make sure all your lug nuts are real good and tight. One good way you can tell if your lug nuts are loose is you'll be able to see scratches on your lug nuts right here, or you'll be able to see little drain deals that come down right here from your lug nuts. They'll drain off right here. That's an indication of loose lug nuts. You want to make sure that your hub seal right here is good and tight. Make sure your oil filler level in there is really good. Make sure there's no cracks or welds on your wheel. Make sure your fuel tank is mounted good and tight. Make sure the hanger straps are not loose and not moving the fuel tank around, and make sure your cap is secured tightly when you get through fueling your truck. You want to make sure your door is working good and secure. Make sure it shuts good. Here's your mirror. You want to make sure your mirror is not cracked and your mirror is adjusted right for when you're driving. You can see out of it clearly. This is your battery box. You want to make sure your battery box is nice and secure tightly on here. Make sure you look around it. Make sure there's no wires hanging out of it. Make sure your drive shaft is not bent. Make sure all the U-joints is tight and there's no rusting or shining around them indicating looseness on your bolts. You need to check your exhaust. Make sure you have no black soot coming out of your exhaust indicating leaks. Make sure it's secured real tightly to where everything is supposed to be. Okay, here's your frame. You want to make sure there's no unauthorized welds or unauthorized holes drilled into the frame. You want to make sure it all looks good and straight. Make sure there's no cracks in your frame. Okay, this is your rear suspension. Check all your springs. These cager springs are here. You want to make sure all these are here tight and secure into the truck. Your brake chamber is tucked in behind here. You want to check that and make sure it's mounted properly and not loose. Your brake hoses and lines are back here also. You want to make sure and check all this. Make sure there's no leaks or cut or frayed. Your brake drum linings are inside the wheel back here. You want to make sure that there's halfway across the surface and no chunks are missing, and at least a 1/4 inch of the lining is left on the brake drum. Here's your rear of the vehicle. This is your lights. You want to make sure your brake lights are red in color and your strobes are in amber in color, and there's no cracks or moisture inside of your lights. Here's your mud flap. You want to make sure it's here and it's not frayed out and not broken. You want to make sure your hanger right here is in good order and it's bolted tightly. Okay, this is the side of your truck. Make sure these lights are working when you turn these lights on right here. Here's your side lights. You want to make sure they work also when you put it in reverse and when you put it in neutral. Okay, this is the inside of your truck. Here's your seat belt. You want to make sure it's in good working order. Make sure you have one of these things on here. You won't get pulled over if you have that on because they can see it. Here's your lighting. Here's your four ways. You want to make sure your four ways work. When you turn those on, walk around your vehicle, make sure your four ways work in front and back. You can turn your blinkers on, make sure your blinkers are working. Your highs and your lows, make sure your highs and your low beams are working. You don't have a light out. If you have a light out, replace it. Here's your parking brake right here. You want to make sure your parking brake works and your button goes up and down real easy. And your windshield right here, you want to look at your windshield. Make sure your windshield's not cracked. Make sure everything's in good working order. Nothing in your peripheral, no illegal stickers on here. And you want to make sure your mirrors are adjusted to where you want to look at them at, so you can look behind the vehicle safely. Your oil pressure gauge is right here. You want to make sure that your oil pressure gauge is working. And most of the time it runs between 40 and 60 psi. Your amp meter is over here. You want to make sure your amp meter is working. And the normal operating range for it is 12.5 to 14. You want to make sure your temperature gauge is in good working condition. And your heater defroster, all the gauges for it right here, all the knobs for it's right here. You want to make sure all that stuff is working correctly. And then your wipers, make sure your wipers ain't damaged. If they need replaced, replace them. And make sure you have washer fluid in your deal so you can clean your windshield off. Okay, to do a brake check, you want to start your truck and let your air build all the way up. Hold your foot on the brake right here, and it shouldn't drop more than 4 psi in 1 minute. Pump the brake till it gets to 60 psi. A warning light should come on or a buzzer will sound in the truck. Keep pumping the brake pedal, and when the button pops, it should be between 25 and 40 psi. If the button don't pop, you need to go get it checked out.